it's never too soon to start talking about hurricane season, especially with what, only 23 days or so left until we officially start the Atlantic hurricane season, which is literally less than a month away. Meanwhile, literally a week from today, the Eastern Pacific hurricane season starts to fire up. And while May isn't officially the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, tropical storms, well, they're not as rare as you might think. So let's show this to you. You'll see that parts of the Eastern Pacific Ocean right here, and then the Western Caribbean. This is an area by mid to late month that we're tracking perhaps what could be some sort of potential activity. Is this rare? Well, as we mentioned before, actually not as rare as you might think. When we look back to 1950 to last year, and you look at the different areas in not just the Gulf of America, but also the Caribbean Sea and then parts of the Atlantic, where we've seen tropical activity of some sort. I mean, Britta, there's a number of locations and markers that we can point to that say, hey, listen, I know it's May. I know that it's not necessarily the start of hurricane season, but tropical activity not necessarily uncommon or unheard of this time of the year.
Yeah, certainly not. I mean, you can get the development. You got to be careful with that. We've seen years past where we've had strong systems in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, think back to Beryl. That, of course, was not a May system last year, but same conversation of having systems happen early. And in Beryl's case, it was particularly strong, a powerful hurricane early on in the season.
Category 5, right? That was like
Yes.
the earliest Category 5 that we had seen, like on record.
And again, the date for that was end of June, beginning of July. So, you know, in May, we wouldn't anticipate something like that. But just a good example to bring up that sometimes you get these oddballs that are like, wow, that was impressive. In May, most of our systems that have formed tend to be tropical storms, tropical depressions. They're weak, they're not well organized. They tend to be really big rainmakers, especially if we don't have a lot of forcing. So they kind of sit and meander over the same spot. But there's a potential development zone with it being so heavy on the Eastern Pacific. It's really not a shocker. If you were looking for a system and potential development, it would be this zone. And if we get something in the Eastern Pacific, it's actually on time. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the beginning of their season, so that would make complete sense.
Yeah, I mean, literally 7 days away until the Eastern Pacific hurricane season begins. Interestingly enough, the last time that we had a named storm in the Atlantic was back in May. In May was in 2023, so just a couple of years ago with Arlene. So just to your point, not uncommon to see that, especially this time of the year, a lot of moisture over parts of Central America because of our easterly trade winds. We're also kind of seeing a little bubble of, or a little spin in the atmosphere. Not necessarily a gyre, but just a broad area of circulation and low pressure that we're tracking.
Kind of like the beginning embers of that. You know, we're just getting the pot boiling before we really get to the main event.
Exactly. So a lot that we're going to be keeping our eyes on, especially by mid to late month.
Yeah, and while we are talking about hurricane season, both for the Pacific and for the Atlantic, let's talk about water temperatures and what we saw last year. I mean, it was record-breaking. That's how we got Beryl, to be quite honest. The only way you can get a Cat 5 end of June, beginning of July is smoking hot water. So water temps are abnormally high. The good news is they're not as warm as what we had this time last year. And we're entering a season and a feel for this hurricane season where we have Enzo in a neutral phase. That means that we don't necessarily have an El Nino setup or a La Nina setup. So when we have Enzo neutral, that kind of means that we're not anticipating the temperatures that are off of South America, disrupting the upper level wind patterns over the Caribbean and also the Gulf in a way that could either constitute a higher than lower activity level or the opposite. Again, it's neutral, and so that leaves the other factors at play. CSU, they're the ones that have their forecast in. Again, they're calling for slightly above average, but I mean, I would say to me, it looks like a pretty average season. It's hard to nail it down to just one, finite number, but the ranges would anticipate something that's at an average or slightly above average season. It's important to note that all that matters is if you're impacted by a hurricane. So you need to make sure that you are prepared. And this is the time of year where it's good to brush up on your preparation kit, make sure that you're ready to go. So what is Enzo, by the way? El Nino, La Nina, neutral. You're like, well, what are you trying to tell me? So we're we're talking about the water temperatures here across the Pacific. The exact zone is 3.4. I kind of think about like Harry Potter, platform 9 3/4. It's just a position marker. And the water temperatures there are important because when they're way above average, they impact the wind pattern over the Caribbean and the Gulf. And of course, strong winds will completely tear apart tropical systems. So we care about what's happening globally because, again, we live on a globe. Everything is connected. So if we have a disruption in temperatures, either a big warm up or a cool down in this zone, it does impact wind patterns, which thus impacts what we're expecting in our tropical season. Hurricanes need very calm winds aloft to allow for that formation to really ramp up. We're expecting Enzo to be in a neutral phase pretty much for the entirety of hurricane season. So, Michael, our eyes will be set on other factors most likely for what the season's going to unfold.